I was halfway through my Eggs Benedict when my stepmother demanded I be removed from the resort. Her words cut across the terrace like a blade sharp, cold, humiliating. Natalie, she snapped, you can't seriously think you belong here dressed like that. I looked down at myself. Dark jeans, neutral blazer, low-profile flats. Not designer, not flashy, just comfortable. Apparently, that was enough to offend her sense of luxury. The server standing beside her froze, tray in hand, unsure what to do. Guests at nearby tables turned. Someone whispered my name, and then my dad. Judge Thomas Lynn, retired but still terrifying, set down his coffee and sighed loud enough to quiet the entire row. "You're embarrassing us," he said without even looking at me. Not hello, not good to see you. Just that, like I was a mistake they couldn't wait to erase. I hadn't seen most of them in years. It was supposed to be a casual family brunch, something about reconnecting. But now, I was standing in the middle of the most exclusive resort on the coast, being told I didn't belong by people who once claimed to love me. And none of them had any idea who I was now. I glanced at my stepbrother Lucas, who'd barely looked up from his phone. I saw the little smirk on his face, the same one he wore back in high school whenever I got blamed for something he did. Cynthia turned to the staff again. "Get the manager," she said. "She's not a guest here. She needs to leave." And that's when I realized they still thought I was the same person who left this family years ago. The failure, the dropout, the disappointment. I looked around the table at people who thought they still knew me. They didn't. And they were about to find out just how wrong they were. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. I was never the one they bragged about. That role belonged to Lucas, my stepbrother, the golden boy. Straight A's, Ivy League law school, now a rising star in state politics, with a carefully curated smile and perfectly timed talking points. Meanwhile, I was the artsy one, the weird one, the one who colored outside the lines, and never got invited back to the gallery. I tried to follow the path they wanted. I really did. I went to law school just like Dad pushed for. But after 2 years of grinding misery, I dropped out. I couldn't breathe in that world, couldn't pretend to care about things that didn't matter to me. That was the first strike. Then came the jobs they whispered about at dinner parties: barista, freelance photographer, virtual assistant. Gig work, they called it with a smirk. Like I was lost, directionless, an embarrassment. I stopped coming to holidays after the last blow-up with Cynthia. She told me I was too sensitive when I called her out for mocking my job in front of her friends. Lucas didn't say a word. Neither did Dad. So I left. And I didn't come back. Not until today, because what they don't know is I wasn't drifting. I was building. While they were toasting Lucas's campaign and updating country club contacts, I was working. I started small, a few freelance contracts in UX design. Then I launched a platform, part social hub, part e-learning. It took off. Within 5 years, I scaled it, then sold it. 28 million. Clean exit. No press. No LinkedIn post. Just silence. Because I didn't need anyone's applause. I invested, learned, built again, quietly. And 6 months ago, when Clear Lake Pines was up for private sale, bleeding money from outdated operations and stale branding, I bought it. Through my company. No headlines, no family announcements, just a signature. And now, here I am at a brunch I never planned to attend, being told I don't belong in a place I own. The irony's almost funny. Almost. But I'm not here for revenge. Not really. I'm here to see what happens when the black sheep walks back into the pasture and owns the whole damn farm. Cynthia wasn't done with me. She looked me up and down, eyes narrowed like she was inspecting a stain on her rug. "Did you roll out of bed and think this was a Denny's?" she said loud enough for half the terrace to hear. "No, seriously, Natalie, this is a private resort. We have standards here." I didn't answer. I just raised an eyebrow and took another slow sip of my mimosa. The server standing nearby looked mortified, like he was waiting for me to explode. or cry. Instead, I smiled. That really seemed to bother her. Lucas looked up from his phone with a lazy grin and said, "Wait, did you sneak in or something? Security must be slipping these days." He laughed like it was the most original joke in the world. Like I wasn't even a person, just a punchline in a family group chat I was never part of. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just reached for the menu and asked the server if the eggs were locally sourced. Dad slammed his hand down on the table. "That's it," he barked. "Enough of this nonsense. I want her removed. Call the manager. Or better yet, call the owner. Now." There was a hush around us. Other tables had gone quiet. Forks paused halfway to mouths. People were watching. Cynthia folded her arms, victorious. Lucas smirked again, leaning back like the scene was entertaining. The manager, young nervous, clearly new, hurried over from the front desk. Dad pointed at me. "She's not a guest. She's not dressed appropriately. She's disturbing everyone. I want her off the property immediately." The manager hesitated. "Sir, Dad cut him off. I said, "Call the owner." That's when I set my mimosa down slowly and looked the manager dead in the eye. "He doesn't need to," I said, calm as a summer breeze. "I'm already here." For a second, no one moved. The words just hung there. Lucas snorted, actually snorted. You're the owner. Yeah, okay. Let me guess you also invented Bitcoin." Cynthia shook her head like I'd just embarrassed myself in public again business, as usual. But the manager's eyes widened. He pulled out a small tablet from under his arm, tapped a few times, then looked back at me. His entire face changed. Respect, panic, and something else, recognition. "Excuse me," he said quickly and darted back toward the lobby. Dad scoffed. Good. Maybe now this farce can end. But it wasn't going to end the way they thought. Not even close, because that tablet held more than my name. It held the truth. And the truth was about to slap every single one of them across the face. It didn't take long. 2 minutes later, the manager came back, this time flanked by someone new. A woman in her 50s, sharp suit, no-nonsense energy. She walked with purpose, her eyes scanning the scene. "Ms. Lin," she said, stopping directly in front of me. "Apologies for the delay. We weren't expecting you this morning." Cynthia blinked. "Ms. Lin?" she repeated, confused. The woman turned toward the rest of the table. "I'm Diana Walsh, Director of Guest Operations. Is there a problem here? My father stood up trying to take control again." "Yes, there is. This young woman, my daughter, walked in dressed like she's headed to a laundromat and started disturbing our brunch. I asked your staff to remove her. She claims she owns this resort." Donna paused, then looked directly at him and said, "She does." Silence. Complete, paralyzing silence. Cynthia actually laughed. A short, awkward chuckle. "This is a joke, right?" Donna shook her head. "No, ma'am, not a joke. Ms. Natalie Lynn is the registered owner of Clear Lake Pines Resort. She purchased the property 6 months ago through her holding company, Linthesis Ventures." Lucas scoffed. "She's bluffing. Natalie couldn't even finish law school. She worked at a coffee shop." Donna didn't even blink. "She's also the CEO. All renovation staff, restructuring, and guest experience upgrades over the last 6 months were signed off under her name." I turned to Lucas, calm and collected. "Would you like to see the purchase contract?" I pulled a folder from my tote and set it neatly on the table. I brought extra copies. That shut him up. He looked at the folder like it might bite him. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. Dad, who hadn't said a word since Dana spoke, suddenly cleared his throat. And without another word, he walked away from the table toward the bathrooms, maybe. Or just away from the scene unraveling in front of him. Cynthia reached for her water glass with shaking hands. Lucas stayed frozen lips slightly parted, as if still trying to figure out whether any of this was real. No one spoke. Not the staff, not the guests watching from nearby tables. Not even me, because the moment was doing all the talking for me. The woman they tried to shame, remove, humiliate. She didn't just belong here. She owned the whole damn place. The silence didn't last long. I turned to Dana and said calmly, "Please have their suite reservation suspended for the next 30 days. Effective immediately." Dana nodded without hesitation. She pulled out her tablet and began typing. Cynthia flinched like I'd slapped her. You're suspending our room," her voice cracked. "We've had that suite reserved for the season. What will people think?" I looked at her steady and cool. "They'll think actions have consequences." Dana tapped once more, then looked up. "Done. Their access cards have been deactivated. Bell service will pack their things and deliver them to the lobby." That's when Lucas exploded. "You can't do this," he shouted. "I've got a press interview scheduled here this afternoon. People are flying in for it." I didn't flinch. "You don't speak to the staff like that anymore," I said. "In fact, you don't speak to anyone here like that. Not anymore." He looked at me like he'd never seen me before, because he hadn't. Not really. Cynthia stood abruptly, knocking her water glass over. It spilled across the table unnoticed. "This is revenge," she hissed. Her eyes were glassy face red. "You're punishing us. Out of spite." I met her gaze. "No," I said, quietly. "This is accountability." She opened her mouth again, but Dana stepped forward. "Security is on their way to escort you to the lobby," she said firmly. "For the next 30 days, you are not authorized to access any private resort spaces, including dining spa or club areas." Lucas cursed under his breath. Dad still hadn't returned from wherever he went to hide. Cynthia sank back into her chair like her bones had given up. And I sat there with perfect posture, sipping what remained of my mimosa, while the sound of footsteps echoed from the entrance. Security had arrived. Not rough, not dramatic. Just two professional men in suits walking with calm authority. Lucas started to argue, but one of them held up a hand. "Sir, please cooperate. You've been temporarily suspended as a guest. You'll be escorted without incident." Dana looked at me for confirmation. I gave a small nod. And just like that, they were led away, out of the terrace, out of the space they thought they ruled, out of my resort. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my phone was already vibrating nonstop. I didn't check it right away. I parked, walked into my house, a quiet lakeside craftsman with big windows and too many bookshelves, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the kitchen, staring at the espresso machine. I still hadn't exhaled. The adrenaline hadn't worn off yet. Then I opened my phone. 12 missed calls, 6 voicemails, too many texts. Lucas was first. "You're insane! Do you even realize what you've done? I've got press people asking why I was removed from my own event venue. You've ruined my image. Call me." Cynthia's came next. "Ungrateful. That's what you've always been. After everything this family gave you. After all the chances you wasted. This is how you repay us." And then Dad. Short. Cold. "You've embarrassed this family beyond repair. What you did today was cruel. I hope you're proud of yourself." I locked the phone screen and walked out to the deck. Sat down. Looked out at the water for a long time. Was I proud? I didn't know yet. The next morning, I met with my legal team, 3 attorneys, and my PR lead, all seated around my conference table with coffee and color-coded binders. They'd seen the footage. Yes, footage. Apparently, someone at the resort had filmed the entire scene and uploaded it to a private social network for club members. From there, it leaked. I was now officially newsworthy. Sarah, my corporate attorney, was first to speak. "Legally, you're fine. The ownership agreement gives you full discretion over membership and guest privileges." But she added, glancing at the PR manager, "that doesn't mean public opinion will be as kind." My PR manager, Layla, leaned in. "This is going to spread, possibly go viral. You need to decide how you want to frame this. Right now, it's teetering between power move and petty revenge." I didn't respond right away. She continued more gently. "If we shape the narrative as you standing up for your dignity, enforcing boundaries, Defending your right to be respected, that lands better. Especially coming from a woman who's been underestimated. Don't lean into revenge, Sarah added. Revenge gets clicks, but dignity earns respect. I nodded slowly. They were right. I hadn't built Linthesis Ventures out of spite. I didn't buy the resort to get even. I'd done it because I believed in creating spaces where people felt welcome, where people like me didn't have to apologize for not fitting someone else's mold. And somehow, that included my family now. I looked at them across the table. I'll offer them a second chance, I said quietly. Sarah raised an eyebrow. With conditions. That got a few nods. Draft something up, I told her. We'll make it official. I'm not interested in burning bridges. But I'm not building new ones without guardrails either. And just like that, the next phase began. Not vengeance. Not forgiveness. Just boundaries. Firm. Clear. And this time, mine. I sent the conditions by email that evening. Not a threat. Not a demand. Just a clear outline of what it would take to move forward. 3 things. First, a written public apology from each of them. Not to me. To the staff, the guests, the people they demeaned by pretending respect only belonged to people in designer shoes. Second, mandatory participation in our next resort staff workshop on inclusivity and class bias. If they were going to be part of this space again, they needed to understand what it meant to truly belong. And third, permanent recognition and respect of my role. No more backhanded comments. No more power games. No more pretending I was just the failure who lucked into something. This time, they'd address me as what I am. Owner, CEO, and their equal. The reply came the next morning. Dad was first. He asked for a call. I agreed with Layla, my PR manager, on the line to keep things professional. He sounded tired, like something in him had deflated. I never knew you were capable of this, he said softly. I didn't smile. You never cared to find out. There was a long pause. Then he cleared his throat. I've already written the apology. I'll attend the training. You have my word. And I believed him, not because he suddenly changed overnight, but because he finally sounded like someone who'd lost the illusion of control. Lucas was harder. He called 3 times, left 1 voicemail, then sent an email that was half apology, half spin attempt. But 2 days later, his press event got canceled. A journalist he'd known for years pulled an interview. Sponsors started backing off. He got the message. And that's when he signed the agreement. Not out of remorse, maybe, but because he finally realized the room didn't revolve around him anymore. Cynthia. She didn't call, didn't write back, but a week later, a letter arrived at the resort. Handwritten, 3 pages. No excuses. No blame. Just words I never expected from her. I thought love looked like control, she wrote. I realize now, it looks more like trust. I sat alone on my porch with that letter in my hands, and I cried. Not because they won, not because I did, but because for the first time in my entire life, I finally saw myself clearly. I was never the failure. I was just blooming where they weren't looking. The next Sunday, I returned to Clear Lake Pines. Same time, same terrace, same outfit. Jeans, blazer, comfortable flats, and no one batted an eye. My table was already reserved, and this time, my family was already seated. When I approached, they stood, all 3 of them. Dad smiled gently and reached out his hand. Natalie, he said, we saved your seat. It was the one with the best view of the lake. I took it. Cynthia was quiet at first, but after we ordered, she asked how the new spa director was settling in. I gave her the update, and to my surprise, she actually listened. No backhanded comments, no passive shade, just listening. Lucas didn't say much, but when I walked up, he stood. And when the server brought my coffee, he passed me the cream before I asked. Small things. But they mattered. Dad pulled out his phone halfway through the meal and said, You know, we don't have a single decent photo of all of us. Would you mind It was awkward and kinda sweet. I said sure. We took the picture right there at the table, sunlight in our eyes, no filters. And when a few guests walked by on their way to the bar, I saw them glance over at me, saw them see the jeans, saw them look up at my face, and then nod politely. No raised eyebrows, no judgment, no whispers, because now they knew. I wasn't just the other daughter anymore. I wasn't the dropout, the failure, the problem. I was the owner. And more importantly, I was finally sitting at that table because I chose to be, not because I needed their approval, not because I wanted to prove something, but because I earned my seat. And this time, no one dared to question it. After brunch, I stayed behind on the terrace for a few minutes, just breathing. The table was cleared, the plates gone, the moment quiet. For once, there was no tension in my chest. No need to prove anything, no performance to put on, just me, exactly as I am. I thought back to the girl I used to be, the one who left that family dinner years ago with her pride in pieces and no clue where she belonged. If she could see this now, she wouldn't believe it. I didn't do any of this to prove them wrong. I did it to prove myself right. My phone buzzed on the table. Another offer, another email from someone asking if I was ready to sell the resort. Big numbers, bigger promises. I looked at the screen, then turned it off. Not today, because for the first time in my life, I was finally seen, fully, clearly, and not just by them, by me. They thought I was the black sheep. Turns out I was just the one who built her own pasture. What would you do if your own family tried to have you thrown out of a place you owned? Let me know in the comments and hit that subscribe if you're Team Natalie.